Ottomans versus Europe, 1683 AD Battle of Vienna, the night the Crescent broke on the cross. You clicked for the turning point. The night an empire's tide met stone walls and a storm of steel. Vienna. Late summer, 1683. Lanterns gutter along shattered ramparts. Smoke coils from broken bastions where the earth itself has been mined and packed to explode. Below, a dark sea of Ottoman tents ripples for miles, each torch a star in a man-made constellation. And here is the first hard truth, the one most forget. The city has endured 59 days of siege already, with bread rationed to ounces and defenders sleeping in armor. It isn't just a battle, it is a countdown. Across the Danube, beyond the black tree lines of the Vienna woods, a second world moves silently. Drums muffled, standards wrapped in cloth, riders whisper to their horses as if secrets could change fate. There is a signal on the Kahlenberg hill, then another, then nothing. Because something has gone wrong, a fuse is being laid beneath the Lobel bastion. In the tunnels, men work by tallow light, coughing, listening for footsteps above. In the city, a boy with soot on his hands stares at a church bell rope he is forbidden to pull. If he rings it, he might save a wall, or bring the night crashing down. The city of two midnights, listen. The city has two midnights now. The first comes with the setting sun, when shutters are barred and priests whisper confessions no one can finish. The second midnight arrives at dawn when the guns start again and the sky for a brief heartbeat is as dark as fear. Vienna breathes smoke. It tastes of damp powder and brick dust. Streets are narrowed with barricades of timber and broken furniture, the makeshift bones of a metropolis preparing to fight room by room if the walls fall. In courtyards, barrels of water stand like silent sentries, and sparrows flutter out of shattered eaves as if trying to carry news to a safer world. On the walls, men wear bandaged hands beneath gauntlets. Their eyes have the glimmer of lamp oil, reflective, flickering, stretched thin. They know how many days of flour remain. They know the names of the bastions that can still stand, and the ones that are now more prayer than stone. They have learned to hear the enemy in the earth. A faint tapping far below, a tremor in bricks that no wind caused, a smell of tallow and damp clay rising through hairline cracks. The city listens the way a hunted thing listens, one with skin, teeth, breath. But here's the shocking truth. The voice inside the wall says, and it is not a voice of panic. The worst wound is not in the masonry. It is in doubt. For doubt spreads like smoke under a door. The commander of the defense, Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, is thinner than summer memory. He walks the parapets with a measured step, pausing to place a hand on a shoulder to share a word that returns a man to himself. He cannot conjure bread from air, but he can conjure meaning. He speaks of time, how to buy it with stubbornness, how to hoard it with deception. He orders false parapets erected to catch enemy fire, orders decoys of straw and planks to rise like ghosts and draw shot away from living men. He knows the Ottomans dig. He digs back. In the sub-cellars of monasteries, he opens countermines and sends squads with lanterns and wet blankets to feel the earth blow cold against their cheeks. When they hear scratching where no rats live, they know what to do. It is the oldest duel in siegecraft, and this time failure means the city explodes from underneath. What happened next? No historian expected. An old mason with ears like shutters finds a hairline fissure in the Lobel bastion, presses his face to it, and hears breathing. Not his own. He whispers to a captain. Within an hour, barrels are hauled into a tunnel like offerings to a dark altar. Not powder. Water. They flood the soil, turn clay to sucking mud, and the enemy gallery sags as if the earth is exhaling. The city for 1 hour wins a heartbeat. The first payoff is small, but it is a breath. And with breath, the voice grows steadier. Beyond the walls, the Ottoman camp is a moving city of cloth. From the ramparts, it looks limitless, but inside, its avenues are precise as a prayer rug. Under the green pavilion, Kara Mustafa Pasha sits like a still lake amid ripples of messengers. He is a quiet man who prefers silk to drum rolls, a strategist who believes that fear always spends cheaper than blood. He does not want a storming of the city. Storming devours soldiers and leaves ruins. He wants a surrender. He wants Vienna intact, its gates opened, its markets unharmed, a jewel he can present to an empire that expects miracles wrapped in discipline. And this is where everything changed. The vizier's patience becomes a weapon. He tightens food supply lines and watches the price of an apple become a scandal. He directs his sappers not merely to break walls, but to break morale. Every small explosion is a prophecy whispered under the city. Every night raid near the counterscarp is a rumor made flesh. He is building a story. The story that Vienna cannot last. Inside the cathedral, candles puddle wax onto stone. A bell rope hangs like a promise someone is afraid to cash. The boy with soot on his hands. His name is not written in the big chronicles. It seldom is. Looks at that rope and thinks of a signal he was told might come. The drumbeat from the woods. A flare on a ridge. Something only the desperate listen for. He has become a symbol of every unseen pair of eyes in the city, and he doesn't know it. On a terrace above the Danube, Starhemberg meets with couriers who arrived at dusk, their horses' flanks white with salt. The letters they carry are damp from river spray and the sweat of men who rode as if words could be arrows. The message is simple. Help is coming through the forest, moving along goat paths and old logging roads. The Holy Roman electorates argue as they march. The Saxons distrust the Bavarians. The imperial contingents count wagons more carefully than prayers. But they are moving. And painted across those rumors like a sunrise is a name. John III Sobieski, King of Poland. Most people never knew this detail. The first Polish scouts who test the edges of the Vienna woods do not arrive with fanfare. They arrive as shadows. They string their horses' tack with rags to mute the clink of metal. And they ride with heads low beneath branches that rag their helmets with pine scent. Their orders are to see and not be seen. They find Ottoman pickets who have grown too used to silence and teach them that the forest can suddenly learn to speak. In the camp, Kara Mustafa receives a fragment of bad news wrapped in careful language. Skirmishing on the western approaches, signs of a coalition force. He listens without blinking. He dismisses the messenger with a gesture that says he is neither impressed nor afraid. Then he orders trenches strengthened toward the woods and tells his gunners to move pieces to rake the slopes if an attack forms there. He is moving stones on a board you and I cannot see, and he believes the game is his. The city, hearing the rumors of help, burns them like incense for warmth. Starhemberg, who fears overpromising more than death, tampers the hope. He opens reserve powder stores under guard and orders a ration of wine to the walls tonight. Not celebration, defiance, but fate had something else planned. The wind shifts. Smoke from the Ottoman lines, where braziers cook meat and scent the night with spices, blows along the walls and down into the tunnels. The city's sappers cough and wipe their eyes. In the Lobel bastion, the old mason returns to the crack with a trick he learned in a younger war. He holds a mirror to the fissure and catches a glimmer of tallow flame deep below. That should not be possible. The earth itself seems to carry a candle. He knows what it means. The enemy is back, closer than before, and this time their gallery has found the dry seam. Starhemberg is told in a voice that doesn't quite shake. He orders a countercharge beneath the earth. In the cellar of a bombarded inn, men strip to shirts and descend with buckets and axes. It is a fight no painter will ever paint. No banners, no cavalry. Just pick against pick, lungs burning, ears ringing with the close thunder of the enemy making their own dawn. Somewhere in that black a fuse hisses. Somewhere a hand gropes for a wet cloth that isn't there. The boy with the soot-black hands has not left the belfry. He cannot see the fuse, cannot hear the hiss. But he hears from the hills a sound that does not belong to the camp. A low, rolling pressure like a storm holding its breath. Drums. Wrapped in cloth, but drums. The relief army, wrapped, moving, close enough that the night itself leans forward to listen. And now, because we have earned it with that first payoff, the gallant drowning of a mine and the proof that hope has a heartbeat, I'll tell you this. If you're drawn to these narrow escapes and iron wills, if you want to ride the ridge with Sobieski and stand on the wall as dawn turns cannon smoke to gold, then stay with me. Subscribe, add your voice in the comments with the battle you want next, and share this with someone who thinks they know Vienna. They know the headline. We are hunting the heartbeat. What happened next? No historian expected. At least not in the way it felt inside the lungs of the men who were there, because the greatest armies do not always meet on fields chosen by maps. Sometimes they meet in the mind first, where fear and resolve shape the ground. A runner finds Starhemberg and places a small packet in his palm. Inside are two things: a scrap of cloth torn from a banner with a white eagle, and a message that speaks of ridges and ravines, and a line of battle that will pivot on a single hill. It is not a promise. It is a plan. Plans are breath to men who have been living minute to minute. On the Kallenberg, campfires are forbidden, but the night does not need fire to see. Faces are pale moons under helmets. A tall man with a hawk's profile studies the dark below as if it were a map. He listens to his captains fight geography and pride, hears them hiss the numbers of battalions and the width of gullies. He nods once sharply as if a chessboard is finally aligned. He is the kind of commander whose silence warms like wine, and his name runs ahead of him into the city like a rumor that refuses to die. And this is where everything changed. The coalition will attack from the heights, not with a single hammer blow, but with a long, sliding press that will grind along the ridge and unhinge the Ottoman flank from the forest to the plain, if they can hold their nerve, if they can keep pace, if the enemy does not tear their ribs out with cannon while they descend. The vizier's green pavilion before dawn, the mist over the plain drifts low, thick as smoke from 1,000 unseen fires. Through it, the Ottoman camp murmurs, a world half awake, the rhythm of an empire breathing in its sleep. Drums roll softly, a heartbeat under canvas. Lanterns swing in the fog like ghostly suns, and the smell of boiled grain, iron, and incense mingles with the chill of the Danube air. In the center rises a pavilion of emerald silk, its peaks tipped with crescents that catch the first hint of light. Inside sits Kara Mustafa Pasha, calm, straight-backed, hands folded on his lap. He is the eye of the storm, he commands. His aides stand in silence, afraid to breathe too loudly. The Grand Vizier does not shout. He doesn't need to. His presence crushes words before they reach the air. He studies a map that is more than parchment. It's his dream stretched flat. Vienna, circled in ink, sits at its heart like prey under the shadow of a hawk. Around it, his siege lines curl with mathematical precision. He has more men than the city has heartbeats. 200,000 soldiers, engineers, and servants of war, enough to drown the city 10 times over. Yet he is restless. The city still stands. What they don't know, he says softly, is that patience wins more than swords. His generals exchange glances. They have fought long enough to know that patience can also rot an army from within. Supplies stretch thin. The summer rots food faster than wagons can bring it. And now, rumors seep through the ranks like damp. Rumors of Christian armies stirring beyond the mountains. The vizier's jaw tightens. Rumors, he says, and the word feels like an insult. But in his chest a flicker of unease twists. He dismisses his lieutenants with a gesture, leaving only his chief engineer, an old man whose eyes have forgotten fear. The mines are ready, the engineer says. One beneath the Lobel bastion, one under the Berg. When the fuses are set, the city will open like a pomegranate. Kara Mustafa nods slowly. Then let it bleed. Outside, as the sun climbs pale and cold, the camp awakens. Lines of janissaries move in silence, armor gleaming with dew. From the siege trenches, cannon crews load powder and shot, each motion practiced until it's almost prayer. And in the city, the defenders brace, counting their remaining rounds, listening for the next thunder that will test their walls. But this morning, the guns do not roar. The vizier has ordered silence. No bombardment, no shouts, just stillness. It is a new kind of weapon. The absence of noise claws at the nerves of the defenders. By noon, men on the walls flinch at every creak of timber, every echo in the tunnels below. Inside St. Stephen's Cathedral, Starhemberg kneels briefly in the dim light. He is not a man given to prayer, but now he prays not for victory, only for endurance. The city has become a living wound. Its veins, alleys, tunnels, ramparts bleed and heal again. He rises to the sound of distant footsteps. A messenger from the north gate, breathless, eyes wide. "They're moving, sir," he gasps. The trenches, closer than before. "We can see the sappers," Starhemberg nods. "Then make them see us." Through spy holes in the walls, the defenders watch Ottoman miners crawl forward with tools and baskets of earth. A single spark from the bastion cannon rips through the quiet. One shot, precise like punctuation in a sermon. The explosion throws men and soil into the air, a grim reminder that the walls still speak. But the silence returns quickly. Too quickly, because something is happening beneath it. That night, in the vizier's tent, a courier kneels before Kara Mustafa, trembling with exhaustion. "Riders from the north, my lord," he says. "They bear the eagle banners, the poles." For the first time, the vizier's composure fractures, a small, sharp crack behind the eyes. He dismisses the courier and turns toward the darkness outside. "So," he murmurs, "the Lion of Poland finally leaves his den." He orders no retreat. Instead, he adjusts his game. Double the guards on the western slopes. Prepare the cavalry. If they come through the woods, we'll meet them before dawn. And yet, even as he commands, his gaze drifts toward the walls of Vienna, silent, defiant, flickering in torchlight.
He knows he has not broken the city's will.
He wanted submission, not ruin. But now ruin may be all that remains. Inside the city, Starhemberg receives a scrap of parchment tied around an arrow shot over the wall. The writing is hurried, smudged. Help is near. Hold 3 more days, he reads it twice. Then with deliberate calm, he burns it in a candle flame. No need to give false hope, he tells his adjutant. But in the tightness of his voice, hope already lives. By the second night, a strange sound rides the wind. Not thunder, not cannon. A low rolling hum like thousands of hooves pressing the horizon. The city hears it. The camp hears it too. What happened next? No historian expected. At dawn, a mist thicker than gunpowder settles over the plain. Through it, shadows move, lines upon lines descending from the Kahlenberg. Flags unfold against the rising sun. White eagles, black crosses, blue banners stitched with gold. The relief army is here. Kara Mustafa stands outside his pavilion, eyes narrowed to slits. The impossible has arrived. He has hours to reshape the world. He orders the janissaries to hold the trenches, the Sipahi cavalry to flank the forest approach, the artillery to focus on the ridge. The camp transforms into a war machine in minutes. Yet amid the command, one hesitation lingers. He glances toward Vienna, the walls battered but unbroken. They will strike from both sides, he realizes, and the city will open its gates to meet them. In the chaos of orders, a thin figure slips through the smoke. A captured courier, bound and bruised, dragged before him. Tell me, the vizier demands, how many? The man spits blood and grins through cracked teeth. Enough. That word haunts Kara Mustafa long after the prisoner is dragged away. By noon, the ridges to the north blaze with movement. Cannon thunder answers cannon. The sky becomes a wound of smoke. From the city walls, Starhemberg watches the distant hills erupt with flashes, like stars dying one by one. He knows what it means. The relief has begun its descent. He gives the order. Open the western gates. Sorties rush out to strike the enemy's rear trenches. The clash of steel echoes across the plain. Inside the city, church bells ring for the first time in 2 months. Not for prayer, this time for war. But fate had something else planned. The Ottoman counterattack comes faster than the defenders can cheer. From the fog, thousands of janissaries surge forward, their cries cutting through smoke. Cannonballs tear through the streets. The first gate shudders but holds. Starhemberg shouts until his throat burns, rallying men to plug breaches with sandbags and bodies. In the camp, Kara Mustafa mounts his horse, white robes flowing behind him like a banner. He rides along the lines, shouting commands with the precision of a blade. The ground shakes beneath the weight of cavalry forming ranks, thousands of armored riders waiting for his signal. He raises his hand. For a heartbeat, the entire plain holds its breath. Then he drops it. The charge erupts, a rolling avalanche of hooves and steel. They thunder toward the ridge, toward the descending poles, and on that ridge, John III Sobieski lowers his visor. Now, he murmurs. The Polish cavalry answers with a single roar. The winged Hussars surge forward, their wings catching sunlight through the haze, their lances leveled like a storm's teeth. The ground trembles as they descend, the largest cavalry charge in history sweeping down like judgment. The two forces collide in the valley between city and camp, a meeting of centuries and faiths. The noise is not sound but shock, metal, screams, dust. Sobieski's horse smashes through Ottoman lines, the wings on his back scattering feathers through the smoke like falling angels. In the city, Starhemberg sees the banners of the Crescent waver. He orders his gates flung open. The defenders pour out, joining the chaos. Vienna breathes for the first time. But the vizier does not flee. He stands amid the ruin of his camp, the silk of his pavilion torn, his guards dying around him. He stares across the field toward the ridge where the cross now gleams against the sun, and his face is unreadable. Not yet, he whispers. Not yet. He signals a final reserve, his elite guard, to strike the flank where the coalition lines begin to stretch thin. It's a desperate move, but desperation has turned the tide of battles before. And for a moment, it works. The Christian advance falters. Dust and screams swallow the horizon again. In the city, bells ring wildly, unsure whether for victory or fear. Then the wind shifts. Cannon smoke parts. From the ridge, a second wave of cavalry descends, fresh, furious, unstoppable. The vizier's guard breaks. His camp ignites. By evening, the sun bleeds red across the plains of Vienna. The siege that began in silence ends in thunder. But when the victors ride into the Ottoman camp, they find the green pavilion empty. Kara Mustafa has vanished. No one sees him slip away under the cover of smoke. Riding east toward fate and somewhere in the city, the boy in the belfry watches the fire spread across the plain. Hearing the faint echo of hooves retreating into the dark, the bells keep ringing. Long after the fighting stops because no one has told them to cease, the city has survived. But the story is not done. For the Crescent has broken, yes, but every broken thing still casts a shadow. The road through the trees dawn slides over the Kahlenberg like a blade of cold light. The forest below hums with the quiet movement of men. Hooves muffled by moss, wheels bound in cloth, the breath of thousands held in a single trembling stillness. The relief army has arrived, but the moment to strike has not yet come. King John III Sobieski sits his horse on the ridge, his armor wet with dew. Around him, the Polish banners hang limp in the morning mist, the great white eagle barely visible in the half-light. He watches Vienna in the distance, a smudge of smoke and stone still clinging to life. The city still breathes, he murmurs, almost to himself. Then we are not too late. Behind him, his generals wait for the order that will decide the fate of nations. They speak in low voices, arguments half swallowed by the wind. The Austrians fear that the Ottoman lines are too deep, that the forest descent will scatter their ranks. The Bavarians whisper that the Poles fight for glory more than survival. Sobieski hears every word but answers none. Instead, he dismounts, kneels, presses his palm to the earth. It is damp and trembling faintly beneath his hand, like the pulse of the battle waiting below. When the ground moves, he says quietly, so does history. Far beneath the ridge in the Ottoman camp, Kara Mustafa studies the same hills through a spyglass. The forest looks calm, deceptively still, yet something unsettles him, a pattern too symmetrical, a silence too deep. "They're there," he mutters, "watching us." He orders his forward batteries turned toward the slopes even before he sees movement. Then he returns to his tent, where an unopened letter lies on his desk. The seal bears the mark of the Sultan. He hasn't dared break it yet. He knows what it contains: expectation, triumph, pressure heavier than steel. He looks at it, then away. He needs victory before the ink inside those words becomes his noose. What happened next? Whispers the wind through the forest. No strategist foresaw. By midday, the mist burns away. The slopes of Kahlenberg unfold like a hidden staircase. Sobieski mounts again. His armor gleams in the new sun, bronze, silver, and the faint glint of feathers on his shoulders. Behind him, 20,000 cavalrymen form into columns, lances lowered, wings of wood and eagle plumes rustling softly like the breath of ghosts. Below, the Ottoman lines shimmer, tents, banners, cannon mouths gleaming in the haze. Between forest and camp lies a ravine cut by centuries of rain. Whoever crosses it first will own the day. Sobieski raises his hand. The sign passes through the ranks. Drums begin to roll, slow at first, then faster. From the city walls, Starhemberg hears the echo and turns toward the north. He sees shapes moving in sunlight, a line of armor and banners spilling from the hills. The sight drives him to the ramparts. "They've come," he breathes, disbelief and relief twined into one. Inside the Ottoman camp, panic ripples. Kara Mustafa's lieutenants scramble for orders. The vizier remains still, his expression carved in patience. "Let them come," he says. "Let them descend into open ground." But the ground he counts on is not loyal to him anymore. The first Allied volleys strike his forward trenches. Dust and fire bloom where his sappers once worked. The Janissaries hold firm, discipline etched into their bones, but they are stretched thin across a front too wide. Then the forest itself comes alive. From the trees emerge the German infantry, their pikes glittering like a moving wall. From the far left, the Austrian footmen advance through waist-high grass, their drums pounding with desperate rhythm. The air fills with cannon smoke, and the battlefield becomes a living fog. Kara Mustafa mounts his horse. Now, he orders, strike their flank. He sends his cavalry westward, expecting to crush the thin Bavarian line. But as his riders thunder across the plain, the trap reveals itself. Sobieski's reserve wing, hidden in the forest, surges forward to meet them, Steel collides with thunder. Dust clouds rise so thick that men fight by sound alone, by the hiss of a sword or the breath of a horse. For every Ottoman rider that falls, another pushes through, but the line bends again, then begins to break. What most people never knew, whispers the narrator's breath through the chaos, is how close the balance came to snapping the other way. For at the city's edge, the defenders falter. The gates stand open, smoke thick around them. A small Ottoman detachment, unseen in the confusion, charges through the western breach, setting fire to the lower wards. Vienna almost falls even as rescue stands at its gates. Starhemberg races through the smoke, rallying men to fight in the alleys. Muskets flash from windows, stones drop from rooftops. The narrow streets become death traps, swallowing the invaders one by one. In the camp, Kara Mustafa sees the brief bloom of fire within the city and smiles. "They're burning their own walls," he says coldly. But even as he speaks, a messenger bursts through the crowd, blood on his sleeve. "The Polish king rides, my lord. The ridge is lost." The vizier turns his gaze upward, and there, through the veil of dust, the hillside glitters like a storm of silver. Sobieski and his cavalry have begun their descent. The sight steals breath. Thousands of horses crash forward in unison, feathers streaming, sunlight catching on steel. The ground shakes, birds explode from the trees, and a sound rolls across the valley like God's own drum. The Ottoman cannons fire once, twice, then are swallowed by the charge. The first line of cavalry hits the enemy flank with unstoppable weight. Men vanish under hooves.
Standards topple.
The vizier's tents ripple in the shockwave. Kara Mustafa's aides beg him to retreat. He stares at them as if they've spoken treason. "Retreat?" he repeats softly. There is no retreat from destiny. He rides forward, his white horse streaked with dust, into a battle already lost to chaos. Around him the air screams. He raises his sword once, then lowers it, realization dawning too late. Because through the dust, Sobieski's personal guard is already upon him. The two commanders lock eyes across a gulf of smoke and bodies, one crowned by feathers, the other by crescents of gold. Neither speaks. The moment passes like lightning. Sobieski veers toward the Ottoman standard instead, driving his banner through the green silk emblem of the vizier's power, and in that single act, the siege ends. The Ottoman lines collapse inward. Drums fall silent. Soldiers drop their weapons and run toward the Danube. The great camp becomes a city of panic, its banners trampled underfoot. By sunset, the horizon burns orange. Sobieski rides through the wreckage, his horse streaked with ash, his armor cracked. He halts before the fallen pavilion, the green silk torn and smoldering. He dismounts, pulls aside the curtain, and finds it empty. "The vizier lives," one of his captains says. Sobieski nods. Then the story is not finished. As night falls, the Polish king enters Vienna through the same gate where the fire had raged. Starhemberg meets him, face blackened with soot. For a long moment, neither man speaks. Then, without ceremony, they clasp forearms. The bells ring again. But this time their sound is strange, half joy, half disbelief. Above the smoke, the moon rises, thin, broken, and pale against the black. And somewhere on the road east, beneath that same moon, a single rider gallops through the dark, his cloak torn, his horse bleeding from the flanks. Kara Mustafa rides toward the horizon, away from the empire he thought unbreakable. He does not look back, but he feels behind him the sound of bells echoing through the night, bells that will follow him all the way to his reckoning. Day of iron, hour of hooves. Morning breaks over Vienna like a bruise, violet, red, and smoke gray. The plain that only yesterday was a living sea of Ottoman tents is now a graveyard of canvas and ash. Horses wander riderless between shattered wagons. The air smells of iron and blood, and somewhere among the ruins, men who fought and survived wake to the silence that follows thunder. The city gates stand open. Soldiers of the coalition drift in, half in triumph, half in disbelief, past walls that look ready to collapse from exhaustion. Women emerge from cellars, blinking in the light. Children touch the broken cannons as if they're monuments to gods they barely understand. And above them, the battered flag of Vienna flaps weakly in the morning wind. But the battle, though ended, has left something restless behind. The bells that rang for victory still echo like ghosts in the hills. Even Sobieski, the man hailed as deliverer, feels the unease settling in his chest. Victory has weight, and his hands tremble slightly as he lifts his visor. He looks over the city, over the camp, and whispers a prayer, not of gratitude but of warning. Wars end, he says quietly, but empires remember. He rides slowly through the Ottoman camp. The ground is littered with the detritus of empire, silks, sabers, broken lutes, cooking pots, and torn letters written in Arabic script. In one corner of the camp, a group of prisoners kneel in silence, heads bowed. One of them looks up briefly and meets Sobieski's gaze. The Polish king recognizes that look, the mix of defiance and disbelief that lingers when the world shifts beneath one's feet. Most of the coalition army celebrates. Drums beat, priests chant, flags wave in drunken rhythm. But Sobieski's eyes keep searching. "The vizier," he murmurs. "Where is he?" Kara Mustafa has vanished, leaving behind a pavilion stripped bare and a trail that leads eastward into the wilderness. Word spreads quickly. Some say he fled toward Belgrade. Others whisper that he was seen by moonlight riding alone with his banner folded across his saddle like a funeral shroud. Starhemberg joins Sobieski at the edge of the camp. The two men, so different in birth and nation, stand for a moment without speaking. The wind tugs at their cloaks. "You've delivered us," Starhemberg says at last. "Europe will sing your name." Sobieski shakes his head. Names fade faster than blood dries. What matters is what follows. The words hang heavy between them. Because already, beneath the surface of victory, new questions stir. Who will claim the glory? Who will own the peace? And how long before the alliances that saved Vienna begin to splinter under their own pride? But here's the shocking truth, whispers the unseen narrator of time. The fall of one siege would plant the seeds for 100 others. That evening, the battlefield burns with torchlight. Officers from every army gather in a ruined farmhouse to divide spoils and argue maps. The Austrians want trophies. The Bavarians demand payment. The Poles, their feathers still glinting with powder dust, only want to go home. Sobieski listens to their bickering as if from far away. His thoughts are elsewhere, on the road east, on the man who escaped. Outside, a messenger arrives breathless, carrying a torn Ottoman banner as proof of pursuit. "He rides for Győr," the man says, with barely a dozen left beside him. Sobieski studies the smoke rising from the plains. "Let him run," he says softly. "History is faster." Meanwhile, in the east, Kara Mustafa rides beneath a sky that feels too wide. His once grand entourage is reduced to a few loyal guards and a single standard-bearer. They move at night, hiding by day, their horses gaunt and lathered. Every sound in the woods makes the vizier's hand twitch toward his sword. The man who once commanded an empire's armies now measures distance by fear. He refuses to look back, yet in every shadow he sees the ridge of Kahlenberg, the place where destiny betrayed him. His mind replays the moment of the charge again and again, searching for the decision that broke everything. Was it arrogance or faith? Perhaps they are the same thing. At a river crossing, he halts. The water runs dark and swift. One of his guards kneels to drink. The vizier stares into the current, seeing his reflection twist and fragment. "They will say I fled," he murmurs. "They will say I shamed the empire." The guard does not answer. He cannot. Behind them, hoofbeats thud on the far bank. Austrian scouts. Kara Mustafa turns his horse and spurs forward, the splash of hooves swallowed by the night. The chase lasts days. Rumors race ahead of him like wildfire. In coffeehouses from Buda to Belgrade, merchants whisper that the Grand Vizier who promised to bring Vienna to its knees is now a fugitive. In Istanbul, the Sultan receives word not of victory, but of disaster, and the sealed letter he had sent, with blessings, now feels like a verdict waiting to be read aloud. By the time Kara Mustafa reaches Belgrade, he knows what awaits him. The silence of his own palace speaks louder than cannon fire ever could. "What happened next?" says the voice of fate. No historian wrote with joy. He is summoned to Adrianople to report before the imperial court. No army escorts him. No band plays. The man who once wore emeralds on his turban now travels cloaked in dust. Along the road, peasants bow in silence, not out of respect, but pity. When he arrives, he kneels before the Sultan. The air in the hall is cold and perfumed with the faint sweetness of decay. No words are exchanged. Only a nod. The guards step forward, silk cord in hand, the ancient instrument of Ottoman judgment. The vizier does not beg. He does not resist. He closes his eyes and whispers one final prayer, not for mercy, but for remembrance. Tell them, he says softly, that I built an empire of patience. The cord tightens, history exhales, and far away, in Vienna, the bells toll again, this time for him. But the story doesn't end in silence, because as Europe celebrates, the seeds of a new war are already germinating. The Ottomans will not forgive humiliation. The Holy League will not forget triumph. Every border drawn in blood will demand another line to match it. In the smoky halls of Krakow, diplomats toast victory but argue about spoils. In the courts of Paris and London, kings whisper that Poland grows too proud. And in Istanbul, young soldiers stare at the map of Europe and swear that one day they will erase the memory of Vienna's bells. Sobieski, writing by candlelight, senses it all. We have won, he pens in his journal, but I fear the peace will be shorter than the siege. He looks toward the window where dawn creeps pale over the rooftops and wonders if men will ever learn that empires fall not in battles, but in what follows them. Outside, the wind shifts again, carrying with it the faint echo of hooves. Somewhere beyond the horizon, armies sleep, waiting to rise when pride demands it. And under the same sky where the Crescent once shone over Vienna's walls, new banners begin to stir in the distance, shadows of wars yet to come. The night that broke the Crescent is over, but its shadow still rides. Night after victory, Vienna sleeps for the first time in months, but the sleep is uneasy. Smoke still coils above the rooftops, and the air tastes faintly of powder and ash. In the narrow streets, soldiers lie wherever exhaustion has claimed them, on church steps, in gardens, by wells still slick with blood. The battle is over, yet the silence it leaves behind feels heavier than cannon fire. The bells that once screamed for salvation now toll slowly, as if mourning all they had saved too late. Each peal rolls through the city like a reminder. Victory has a heartbeat, and it's often indistinguishable from grief. In the cathedral, Count Starhemberg walks alone down the aisle, boots echoing on cold stone. The candles flicker around him, their flames bending in the draught. He stops before the altar and lays his hand on the marble, whispering to no one. How many walls must a man defend before he forgets what peace sounds like? His voice cracks, not from pain but from emptiness. He has won everything that could be won, and it feels like loss. Outside, the dawn glows pale over a field that was once the empire's pride. Piles of Ottoman weapons gleam in the mist. Tattered banners lie in the mud. And scattered among them are things no one expected to find. Letters written in Turkish, Persian, and Arabic. Words of love, of home, of promises that never reached their destinations. Soldiers begin to read them quietly, almost reverently. The realization spreads like a chill. The men they fought were not faceless demons. They were mirrors, different prayers, same humanity. But here's the part no one told in the victory songs. Whispers the voice of the unseen storyteller. The victors looked into the eyes of the fallen and found their own reflection staring back. King John Sobieski stands at the edge of the plain, his white eagle standard now stained with dust and smoke. He watches his men bury the dead, Christian and Ottoman alike. He has fought wars all his life, but this morning feels different. The sunrise, sharp and golden, doesn't warm him. It blinds. He takes a letter from his coat, creased, worn. It's from his wife, Queen Marie, written before he left Krakow. Return not as conqueror, but as guardian, for every victory is only borrowed. He folds it again, slower this time, and whispers to himself, borrowed indeed. Around noon, envoys from the emperor arrive in gilded carriages. Their fine clothes stand in sharp contrast to the mud-streaked armor of the soldiers. They speak of parades, of statues, of eternal gratitude. Sobieski listens politely but says little. His eyes remain fixed on the battlefield. No statue, he says quietly, will bring back the boy who carried my banner up that hill. The envoys exchange uneasy looks. They expected a triumphant king. They find a tired man who understands too much. In the following days, the Holy League celebrates across Europe. Painters in Rome and Venice rush to immortalize the charge from Kallenberg. Priests call it divine intervention. Merchants mint coins engraved with the city's walls and the broken crescent beneath them. But even amid the triumph, something begins to shift, an undercurrent of unease. The allies who fought side by side start whispering about borders, about debts, about whose name history will remember first. In Krakow, Sobieski's messengers arrive ahead of him, singing of victory. Yet in their wake come darker rumors, stories of Ottoman vengeance, of armies regrouping beyond the Danube. The peace they celebrate is already cracking at the edges, and in Istanbul the Sultan sits in silence while the court reads the final report. The name Kara Mustafa echoes through the chamber like a curse. There is no debate, no mercy. The silk cord is sent, and with it a message to all. Failure has no shadow long enough to hide in. When the news reaches Vienna, Starhemberg is told at supper. He sets down his cup and stares into the fire. So it ends, he says. But does it? The following morning he walks through the ruins of the Ottoman camp one last time. The smell of death still clings to the earth, but among the wreckage he finds something strange. A small box carved with verses in Arabic. Inside lies a miniature crescent standard, its tip broken cleanly in two. He holds it for a long moment, then leaves it buried beneath a collapsed tent. Some symbols, he thinks, are better left to rest. Yet the shadow of that broken crescent follows him. It will follow Europe too, because the victory at Vienna is not an ending, it's an awakening. The empire that retreated is not destroyed. Its pride smolders beyond the mountains, and in the years to come those embers will glow again. What happens when one world survives another's dream? The narrator's voice asks softly. Does peace truly return, or does it simply change its flag? Months later, Sobieski returns to Poland. Crowds cheer his name, but he rides with his visor lowered. The songs praising him sound hollow. He remembers the faces in the fog, the Ottoman soldiers who looked as certain as he once did. And at night, when sleep comes, he dreams of a field without banners where no horses thunder and no bells ring. On a winter's evening, he stands at his castle balcony overlooking the Vistula. Snow drifts across the river like ash. His son joins him, still young enough to believe in glory. Father, the boy asks, was it worth it? Sobieski looks into the white horizon. Ask me again, he says, when the world no longer needs men like me. And somewhere beyond the snow, far across the plains and deserts of the East, a new generation sharpens its swords in silence. They will inherit the memory of Vienna not as defeat but as debt. The night the crescent broke on the cross is over. But the line between them, drawn in blood and faith, still glows in the dark, waiting for another dawn to test it. Because history, like war, never truly sleeps. It only changes the sound of its marching boots.